Some people think the Greataxe is a brain-dead weapon, an unskillful amateur-hour face-roll option of weaponry. You wanna know what I think? I see a Greataxe, a full-size 4x4 Jeep Wrangler Transforma Giga Chad Alpha Male. We're not just spinning to win, we're out here mowing the grass of the battlefield, chopping down every peasant in sight, and weed whacking like we're getting paid for it. So the next time you pick up a Greataxe, just know you're not just choosing a weapon, you're choosing a goddamn lifestyle. Welcome to the Greataxe Club. Welcome to Scripted Gaming. Sup guys, Border here with Scripted Gaming and the Greataxe Club. Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be trying something a little bit different, something I've been meaning to do but have not gotten around to yet, and that is making a tier list for our favorite weapon tree, the axes. So not only are we going to be putting each axe in the respected tier, but we're also going to be doing a quick overview as to what content they're useful in. So if you guys are kind of struggling to determine what kind of axe is best for what scenario, what kind of content, stick around. This video is going to help you out with exactly that. Which leads us into the different tiers we're going to be placing our axes in today. Starting at the very top of the list, we have S, which is God tier, a weapon that's super strong and very relevant in its respected content. Followed by A tier, which is strong, obviously an overall very solid pick, and still fairly relevant in the respected content. We then have B, which is just useful, a very handy and useful, and a weapon you can get decent results out of, but is not overly strong. And then we have C, which is relatively weak and could definitely need a buff to regain relevance. And then I also switched D to needs time, just something that I might not have enough information on, or the community might not have enough information on, and it might need a little bit more time before we can determine how good this weapon actually is. With all that said, as you guys already know, tier lists are completely subjective, so if you don't agree with some of the decisions I make, it's completely fine. Feel free to respectfully let me know in the comments down below. That way we can have a little bit of a discussion, and maybe let me know what your tier list is down in the comments below. But with that all out of the way, let's get right into it. And if you want to see a few more lights on this little Christmas tree here, maybe consider liking the video and subscribing. Alrighty guys, to kickstart this tier list, we're going to start with the Realmbreaker. So we're going to move that all the way up to the front. When it's starting with the relevance in PvE, when it comes to solo fame farming, it is basically non-existent. You're going to have a bad time. But if you're interested in fame farming as a group, then you're in luck. It's a very good axe for group dungeons, specifically more as a supportive role. Landing those E, of course, helps with damage, but it helps more with the debuff that it places, reducing the mob's health by a certain percentage. And that way it can help your group kill things a lot faster, so the rest of the group DPS will appreciate that a lot. Moving on to PvP with the Realmbreaker, if you're looking to do small scale PvP and interested in more of a clap comp, looking for that big clap to potentially one-shot or do a bit of a combo against enemy groups, then the Realmbreaker can be really good for that E. And of course the debuff, again, reducing the total health of the players, obviously super good. So for small scale PvP, definitely a strong choice. And then as well as ZVZ. I'm not as familiar with ZVZ, but I know there is a relative build in the meta right now. Again, more for the supportive role, mainly for that clap, but also again the debuff, reducing the enemy's total health. Super useful. So in PvP, it's definitely more oriented for group play. Again, solo, non-existent for group play. Very good for small scale PvP and ZVZ as well. So just to throw my opinion on the Realmbreaker, I think it's a really strong choice. If you like that more clap one-shot combo style play, then the Realmbreaker can be really good. It's fairly easy to pick up and play. The real difficulty with this weapon comes the coordination, because you really need the rest of the group to help follow up on that clap damage, or maybe group them up with like a Witchworker staff or something like that to group them in, where you can then lay down that big E. So it takes a little bit of coordination. It's not easy, but it can be very beneficial to play in the end. It's also the most expensive axe to use out of all of them, as it is the Avalonian axe of the weapon tree, so keep that in mind. You're going to need a little bit of a budget if you want to play this axe consistently. So with that all said, it's a very strong pick in terms of axes, so hence the word strong. That's exactly where it's going to go in the A tier. A very strong pick if you're looking to get into a group-oriented weapon. Alright, keeping us moving here, for the second axe of the tier list, we have the Carrioncaller, moving that all the way up to the front. When it comes to PvE, it's not very useful. The E specifically reduces enemy healing received, does a little bit of damage, but nothing crazy. So for PvE, it's not very useful. Of course, you can fame farm it if you wish, as at the end of the day, it is an axe. You'll still have a fair bit of damage between your Q and W if you do have Raging Blades unlocked, but otherwise PvE, not very useful. However, if you're looking to PvP with the Carrioncaller, then it's a little bit of a different story. It's very useful in 5v5 Hellgates and also Arena. The healing debuff that it does place can be a nightmare for healers to heal against, especially when paired with the Hood of Tenacity for the healing debuff ability. This will make it even more difficult for healers to keep their allies alive, and will not thank you very much for it. It can also be used in small-scale PvP. It can be thrown into a type of brawl comp, where a bunch of melees are fighting alongside it, and again, just really using that healing debuff to your full effect. So just throwing my opinion in there, Carrioncaller, it's a pretty fun pick. It doesn't offer anything for solo play, PvE, or PvP, but if you're looking to get into group PvP, it's really good for that healing debuff. So with that said, it's more of a niche pick, but can be fun if you're into playing that more supportive role as a DPS. So with that, it is useful, so we're going to throw it in that respective tier of B, the useful tier, which leads us into our third axe of the tier list, which is the Halberd, one that most people might not be as familiar with for certain reasons, but getting into PvE to start off, again, doesn't offer anything crazy. The damage of the Halberd is very consistent, but nothing very high, so for PvE, solo or group, it's not great. Of course, it's an axe, it does decent AoE, so you're going to be able to farm through mobs easy enough at a slower pace, but overall doesn't offer anything unique when it comes to PvE. When it comes to PvP with the Halberd, in terms of solo play, I'm sorry, I don't think you're scoring any kills. Unless you have a crazy high IP advantage, it's not happening. But when it comes to group PvP with the Halberd, specifically for small scale PvP, it's not the worst weapon you could bring. It does offer that, spread your bleeds, grind the enemy down, and apply that healing debuff to the enemy. So it offers a little bit, could be thrown in a bit of a brawl comp if anything, but there are other or better weapons you can definitely bring in that scenario. In terms of ZVZ, I think it used to be used a little bit more before it was nerfed once or twice. Again, just for all that AoE damage, spread your dots through the E and apply that healing debuff. But since then, I think it's been nerfed. I wasn't able to find any relevant builds for ZVZ, so I think it's kind of fallen out of the scene a little bit. So yeah, that's the Halberd for PvP. So just throwing my opinion in there for the Halberd, I think it's a pretty cool weapon. I kind of like the unique playstyle of spreading your dots and the healing debuff and just grinding your enemies down slowly but surely. It's a cool playstyle, and I think it could synergize well with other weapons that do the kind of the same thing. But at the moment, I think it's pretty underwhelming. PvE, probably forever and always, but even for PvP, I think it's pretty weak right now. So with that said, we're going to throw it in here. I think it needs a little bit of a buff, or something's got to change for it to gain relevance. You guys can argue with me with that in the comments if you'd like, but right now I'm going to put it in the C tier for the moment. So jumping over to our fourth axe of the tier list, we're going to switch to something a little bit more well known, and that is the Battleaxe. Changing that to the front of the list. When it comes to PvE, for solo fame farming, it is exceptional. It's probably one of the best options you can use for fame farming as an axe player solo. From the early tiers all the way to tier 8, the tougher mobs, you're going to have the damage and sustain to heal through some pretty challenging mobs, especially when paired with a Hellion Jacket. You'll have a great amount of self-healing, and you'll do really well in solo fame farming. In group fame farming, not so great. You're better off using a different option, but if you're more into solo play PvE, then the Battleaxe is definitely for you. When it comes to PvP, I think when it comes to solo play, it is definitely one of the strongest axes we have to offer. So with that said, if you're into corrupted dungeons or solo mists, or maybe you're interested just more in roaming the black zone or things like that, finding little 1v1s, it's going to be the best axe, in my opinion, that you can use for solo PvP. So it's really strong in that regard. When it comes to group play, not as good. So with that said, it's very more niche to solo PvP. Just to throw my opinion in there for the Battleaxe, I think for solo players, it's probably the best axe you can use if you're getting into PvE and PvP. Very, very strong pick. In terms of the difficulty, I just put it at like a medium level. It's not too hard, but at the end of the day, the E is a projectile, so you do have to land that shot in order for you to get your damage in and receive the healing, of course. So not too hard, but you gotta get used to landing that projectile. And then it's also a pretty cheap option in terms of silver, paired with an offhand such as a torch. Pretty budget, so you won't be blowing through all your silver or anything like that. But overall, the Battleaxe is super good pick. So for that, with its relevance in PvP and PvE, I'm gonna throw it all the way at S for God tier. I think it's a super, super strong pick right now. One of the best axes in the tree for sure. Alright guys, and that leads us to the 5th axe of the tier list, which I feel like is a little bit slept on, but is overall a fan favorite for sure. The axe of the Grim Reaper himself, and that is the Infernal Scythe. When it comes to PvE, solo, it's not too bad. At the end of the day, like I've said before, it's an axe, you're going to have good AoE damage. In terms of the E itself, it doesn't execute, so again, if you can get your mobs below, I believe it's 35% or 30% health, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to be able to land that execute damage, destroying the mobs instantly at that health percentage. So overall, pretty good. In terms of group fame farming, same use, it's just okay, it's not exceptional, there's better weapons you can use, but overall, pretty good in PvE. Jumping over to PvP with the Infernal Scythe, if you ask most people in terms of solo play, they'll tell you there's about like 15 other melee weapons that could be better, but that's not to say you can't get results with the Infernal Scythe. I've actually had pretty good results myself, just roaming around the Black Zone or doing corrupted dungeons. It doesn't do exceptional damage, but there's always that threat of the execute. So if you're able to land them underneath that certain percentage of health, you can land those big executes and watch your enemies essentially disappear in front of you. So that can be a lot of fun. When it comes to group PvP, same scenario. It's not too bad. It could be thrown into like a small scale brawl comp. Just having that execute damage is always a potential threat. Again, most people will say you could probably just bring like a bloodletter or something and has the same execute ability with more mobility on the weapon. So there's that. But overall, I really like the Infernal Scythe for PvP. I think it can be a lot of fun. It's not necessarily a meta weapon, but can be useful. So I guess that was a little bit of my opinion leaking through there already. But overall, I think the Infernal Scythe, it's a super fun pick. I love the idea of the execute, just snapping your fingers like Thanos and just watching enemies disappear with the execute can be a lot of fun. Overall, it's fairly easy to play. The goal is always the same, just to reduce their health under that certain health percentage, and then execute them if the job is done. Overall, it's still a fairly cheap option, so you're not going to be using too much silver to budget this type of weapon. But yeah, so overall, it has its use. It's not meta. It's not overly strong. So with that said, it has its place. So with that said, I'm going to put it in B tier, which is useful. Bearpaws is a whole different story. It's one of the only axes that actually really excels when it comes to ganking, whether if it's solo or group ganking, especially with the E ability, that assassin playstyle, allowing you to jump and especially dismount your enemies, whoever you're trying to gank, can be super strong. Also, if you're into other solo plays such as the Mists, it's a pretty competitive weapon. It does lose to a handful of certain weapons in terms of matchups and whatnot, but that's not to say that you can't get good results. As well as just roaming in the Black Zone in general. A lot of fun, a lot of potential there with the Bearpaws. So overall, the Bearpaws for PvP, pretty good. And in terms of my opinion on the Bearpaws, overall, I think it's a really fun pick. It's very strong. That assassin playstyle, landing that E, jumping through the air, super cool. When it comes to the difficulty, I would say medium to maybe a little bit more than that. Just because if you land the E, it's great, your job is done. However, if you miss your E, not only do you miss out on all that damage, but the cooldown is also relatively long as well. So if you're landing your E, you're good. If you're not landing your E, you're in some real trouble. So for that, I'll put it at medium difficulty. When it comes to the cost, the Bearpaws are actually a little bit more expensive. So with that said, if you're looking to consistently play the Bearpaws, you're going to need to have a little bit of a budget. But overall, when it comes to the overall tier for the Bearpaws being super relative in PvP, not so much in PvE. I still think I need to put it in A tier, maybe just behind the Realmbreaker. Super relevant, so overall a really good PvP axe. And that leads us down to our final 2 axes of the tier list, which means we're gonna do the no, we're gonna leave the fan favorite for last. Instead, we're gonna do the Crystal Reaper. So when it comes to PvE, the damage is very interesting. So for fame farming solo, it'll be okay. It seems to have pretty decent damage. The E doesn't seem exceptional at the moment. It has consistent, allowing you to, you know, hit enemies and get that E charge off cooldown fast, using it multiple times. So it seems okay. It's not going to be the fastest in terms of in terms of fame farming. So group play, I wouldn't bother bringing it. I think there's a lot better options. So for PvE, it's okay. You'll be able to fame farm it easy enough. But yeah, it just seems mediocre at the moment. When it comes to PvP with the Crystal Reaper, I don't think you're going to see anyone using this weapon solo. With that said, I wouldn't recommend using it for solo PvP. When it comes to group play, not from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like the strongest pick either. If you were to bring it in any scenario, yeah, maybe you could bring it into like small scale PvP. Again, use it as a brawl comp just for all that, the damage, the AoE, the cleave. I think it would serve its purpose okay there. But otherwise, doesn't seem like the best option either for group PvP. So throwing my opinion in there, when it comes to the Crystal Reaper, I think I need more time with this weapon to really determine its potential. It has an interesting playstyle. I do kind of like when you hit at least one enemy, all your weapon abilities are reduced by 33% in terms of cooldowns. I think that's kind of interesting. It allows you to get a second W off cooldown very fast, so a little bit of potential there, which could be a little bit of fun. In terms of difficulty, I think it's going to be medium. Yeah, it's easy enough to say, oh, you can just like spam E when you're within, you know, the circle of the E or whatever, and get damage that way. I think there's going to be a little bit more to it when it comes to really maximizing the overall DPS output. So there's that. And then in terms of the cost, it's a crystal weapon. It's going to be really expensive, so it's not going to be something you want to lose out in the black zone, red zone, or whatever have you. So yeah. So for the Crystal Reaper, this is exactly why I added D tier, which is needs more time. Not to say it's horrible, I need more time with it, maybe the community might need more time with it, SBI might need more time with it in terms of like changing it a little bit. But you know what, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it is better than I'm making it out to be. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll go from there. And just like that, we're down to the last axe of the tier list. If you skipped to this part of the video, shame on you, but at the same time, that's okay. I understand your apology. But just like that, look at that, we have not one, but two Greataxes. And I'll tell you why. When it comes to the most Chad playstyle and my most biased opinion, the Greataxe is S tier 100% in my heart. But when it comes to the actual proper ranking, we're not going to be biased, we're going to do this right. So with that said, when it comes to the Greataxe in PvE, it's actually a very strong pick. When it comes to solo fame farming, you're going to have a really easy time clearing down mobs, whether if it's open world fame farming or solo dungeons or just clearing out encampments with a new update. It's going to be really strong. Group fame farming is still pretty good. It's not the most meta pick in terms of group dungeons or anything like that, but it still offers quite a bit of damage, so it's always going to be pretty useful when it comes to PvE. Switching over to the topic of PvP when it comes to the Greataxe. When it comes to solo, honestly, it's not very good. You guys might have seen videos of mine in the past doing corrupted dungeons and solo Greataxe PvP and stuff like that. It can be a lot of fun, but if we're going off meta and what is relevant, it's not a great solo weapon, so let's get that out of the way. But when it comes to group PvP, it's actually pretty good. It has a pretty relative build when it comes to small scale PvP, using the Greataxe itself and then paired with something like the Stalker Jacket or Hellion Jacket for a fighter set. Small scale PvP, it's actually pretty good. It poses quite the threat, all that AoE damage, especially when paired with high IP. It can be pretty devastating when mowing through an enemy group of an enemy group of players. So it can be pretty good in that regard. But yeah, so better for group PvP overall. And now the only thing left to do is throw my opinion in there with the Greataxe and of course the placement. But overall, the Greataxe playstyle, super fun. If you like that spin to win, mow the grass with the battlefield, you know, become a Chad playstyle, Greataxe is a lot of fun. It's my personal favorite for sure. Overall, the difficulty, it's super easy to play actually. It's very easy to pick up just using your Qs, W, and then of course spinning with your E. Pretty easy overall. Even a side note, if you're into mobile, I've heard a lot of people have a lot of success on mobiles. It's pretty easy to control when playing on your phone. And then the cost is pretty cheap overall, so it's pretty affordable in general. So in the current meta, if I did this list of like 2 years ago, it would have been S tier 100%. But since it is had a couple nerfs in the past, and then they buffed it recently, so it got a little bit better. I'm gonna put it in B tier. I would have to put it in the front of B, in front of the other axes here. It's definitely useful. It has a couple relative builds. It's not the strongest of all the axes, but it has its place. So for now, unfortunately, it's in B tier, but maybe in time we'll see it back in S tier. We can only hope. But that's it, guys. That is our axe tier list at the end of the year of 2024. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this list. I think we did a pretty good job. If yours looks a little bit different, let me know in the comments below. It's 100%, as I said before. Tier lists are 100% subjective, so let me know what you think in the comments below. If you want to see these axes in action, we stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. UTC, that's Universal Time, where I'll be putting these axes to use on European servers, as I have a new character and I've really been enjoying that. So we'll see you guys in the stream. Otherwise, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this every Monday, and maybe, hopefully soon, SBI will put me back in the content creator program. That way I can give you guys 7-day codes of premium and stuff like that for weekly giveaways in the stream and the videos, of course. But otherwise, that about does it for me. I'll see you guys in the Greataxe Club community Discord, linked down below. Like and subscribe. Thanks for all the support, guys. Big love. And until next time, stay positive, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.